A rivalry renewed down on the Bayou. The Magnolia Bowl as the LSU Tigers take on the Ole Miss Rebels. We are here previewing, predicting, and breaking down this game as the Tigers and Rebels do battle. Hello, everyone. I'm Chris Phillips. He's Cole Thompson. Appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in. Make sure you like, subscribe, turn notifications. Check us out via podcast, wherever you get your podcasts. You can also find us across all social media platforms, as well as our website, SECUnfiltered.com. This segment brought to you by our friends over at Prize Picks. Go to prizepicks.com. Use promo code SECU at sign up to get $50 instantly when you play your first $5 or more lineup. Again, that's prizepicks.com. Promo code SECU to get your $50 bonus today. The LSU Tigers and Ole Miss Rebels set to do battle in Baton Rouge in the Magnolia Bowl, the heated rivalry that dates back many years and has seen many incredible chapters, including last year. And folks, in case you've missed it, it's been a long, bitter offseason for the folks down in the Bayou, Lane Kiffin trolling. The emotions are going to be running high on Saturday night. And SEC Unfiltered will be on hand to take it all in, as this is the SEC Unfiltered Tour Game of the Weekend, brought to you by our friends over at Prize Picks, as we'll be down in Tiger Stadium to watch LSU and Ole Miss do battle. We are here previewing, predicting, and breaking down this game. I am Chris Phillips. Helping me do so, my good friend joins me once again, Cole Thompson. Cole, appreciate you taking the time, my man. I am as fired up as I've been for any game. Number one, to be in attendance, because there's nothing like Death Valley at night down in the Bayou, and it'll be my first experience, by the way, my first full experience. I went down there 2020, but it was COVID. Doesn't count. My first full experience getting that Death Valley at night, Baton Rouge. I've heard so many great things, but also, Cole, what a hell of a football game we've got in store. When you factor in what's on the line, pair of one-loss teams, what happened last year, what's happened since. Can't wait to break this one down with you, my friend.
I think Coke is nervous right now. Do you like Coke? Does anybody like Coke? Do people like – well, I mean, Brian Kelly loves Coke. He mentioned in his press conference how much he loved Coke when Lane Kiffin hated Coke. And then they're having that relationship.
I'm not going to lie. With these two fan bases and this game, I thought you were talking about something else. Continue.
Oh, don't worry. He loves you.
Listen.
He loves you. I'm sure.
Listen, with this game and from what I've heard about Baton Rouge, I wasn't sure.
Coke's stock is either about to plummet or it's about to skyrocket because of who walks away with the win. But, Chris, these are the games that you wake up for and you realize they're just different. These are the games in the Southeastern region that you can't duplicate on a Sunday. These are the games that players dream of for 364 days a year because of what happened the last time that they took center stage. LSU fans, remember, as the Grove was corralled in a sea of that hotty-toddy blue and red as they walked off, feeling the L. And it was the start of the Jackson Dartnado era race for the Heisman Trophy, race for making it to 11 wins, a season to remember in Oxford, and once again, wondering what could have been with the Heisman Trophy winner on your sidelines down in Baton Rouge. But these two teams coming on in, one team is coming well-equipped and well-prepared because they're fully healthy after a bye week, and the other team, they may have to pull out every single nook and cranny from the kitchen sink just to be able to walk out of Baton Rouge with a dub. That's what we're talking about. But you know what? Regardless of who wins this game on paper, the fans get to witness what should be a moment in college football history. And more importantly, there truly is nothing like a Saturday night in Death Valley in the South. There truly is nothing like a fall Saturday night down in the place where dreams go to die. But whose dream is dying for a college football playoff hunt? I'm excited, dude. You got me fired up. I'm ready to go. I don't even need the caffeine today. We don't need a course through veins. We got the Rebels and we got Brian Kelly, Lane Kiffin doing a battle royale down in Baton Rouge at the greatest stadium that has ever existed in college football history. You don't need caffeine for that. You're either locked in or you don't care about this damn sport, to say the least.
Again, guys, the SEC Unfiltered Game of the Week, the SEC Unfiltered Tour will find us down in Baton Rouge this weekend. Again, a 6:30 Central Time kickoff on ABC at Death Valley in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Cole, Ole Miss is a 3-point favorite in this game. The over-under is set at 64 points. So Vegas is expecting a high-scoring game yet again. The series history, Cole, LSU leads this one 65, 42, and 4. And you mentioned it, Cole. Who can forget the last meeting last year? Ole Miss won a thriller 55-49 down in Oxford. And Lane Kiffin hasn't let LSU fans forget it this offseason. Cole, as we dive into this game, I want to start there, the Magnolia Bowl, because it's so interesting, the dynamic of this contest. And to kind of let the cat out of the bag, this is one that we've had planned for weeks. I've had this game planned for weeks. I've had this one circled as long as the matchup was still going to be high profile, which we expected it would. We were going to go down to this game. So I've been having conversations about this game, looking ahead to it for a bit. So I've had these combos with some LSU folks. It's interesting, Cole, because the newer age or younger LSU fan, you ask them, who's your biggest rival? They immediately point to Alabama. Like that, Alabama is the game, most hated rival. You ask the older LSU fan, who's the most hated rival? Who do you hate more than any? It's this team. It's Ole Miss. And I think Ole Miss fans would say the same. I don't know if people really understand the hatred in the Magnolia Bowl, the hatred that LSU and Ole Miss fans have for one another. And again, I'm going to find more about it this weekend, but from what I've talked to with LSU folks and Ole Miss folks, there's a much deeper level of hatred than I think people understand. And especially too, Cole, when you look at what happened last year, Lane Kiffin, however you feel about him, you love him, you hate him, whatever. He's the social media Steve Spurrier, Cole. The way that he's twisted the knife over this past offseason, random tweets of, hey, look what's on the TV, and it's highlights from that game. Cole, literally last week, he's talking about their matchup with South Carolina, a low-key dig and troll at LSU. Well, South Carolina, they're a penalty away from being undefeated. LSU fans took that personally, Cole. They felt like that was a jab. Like, this game at baseline would already be high intensity. Then you factor in this whole revenge factor thing that's going on. It's why it made it a no-brainer for us to go. The atmosphere, Cole, we talk about these beautifully toxic, insane atmospheres.
Cathedrals of chaos, man, I'm telling you.
Tiger Stadium is going to be unhinged on Saturday night. It's already a night game at Death Valley. Then you got this Lane Kiffin dynamic, pair of one-loss teams. I think we all understand, I won't beat it to death, what it means for the college football playoff, why you can't suffer a second loss and still really feel comfortable about your standing, especially if you're Ole Miss with your schedule. LSU, same thing, though, when you look at what they've got upcoming. So there's so many different angles, Cole. There's so many different storylines. But the fascinating rivalry, revenge factor, you mix that all together, it's going to make for one of the premier atmospheres in college football that we see this season.
Chris, I call them cathedrals of chaos because we just see nonsensical things that don't exist in college. I mean, the NFL on Saturdays in these places. Tiger Stadium is Vatican City in the Cathedral of Chaos is. There are just reasons why Les Miles mentioned this is a place where dreams come to die because of it is. And also, this does have college football playoff implications on it. This truly is what you would call the first round of a college football playoff showdown in the regular season, because it's two different scenarios here. For Ole Miss, you can't afford to lose this game because you would now drop to 1-2 in conference play, which means you're going to have to beat Oklahoma, which means you're going to have to beat Georgia and probably pretty soundly to guarantee your spot in. But it's flipped the other way because of LSU, I think, wants nothing more than to go back to Las Vegas and just allow Garrett Nussmeier to kind of uncork this offense in this catapult of an arm, because USC is starting to dwindle away with its high stakes. It's now undefeated, and that's a loss that looks bad against you and your resume, where 10-2 isn't promising enough for you either. So these games truly have major implications. And they also feature two of the more high-profile coaches that are brought up in every conversation, Brian Kelly and Lane Kiffin. And also the way that these two teams have come about in the last year. It's funny how we've gotten to this point. One team overlooked a Kentucky defense that probably is top 10 in college football. The other team didn't add in certain pieces on defense, but they brought in the right personnel. the right teachers to take B- students and bring them up to an A- level of play. Because that's what you're watching with this defensive line. That's what you're watching with this linebacking core. In my opinion, losing Harold Perkins, as much as it does pain, I think the likes of those out in Baton Rouge because of just who he is as a player, LSU's defense looks a lot better without him at this point. And so that's just a profile of what the understanding and the sentiment of going out and adding in a Blake Baker. There's so many storylines in this. But more importantly, the big factor is it's a pure hatred. It's an internal just disgust and disdain. And the younger generation and people who like me that just were, kind of dropped on into Tuscaloosa or dropped on into Baton Rouge, we don't understand the culture of the Magnolia Bowl until you truly start doing some due diligence research. It is a hatred that is unbeknownst to most people throughout the country, and you're going to watch it on Saturday night. But the thing that really stands out in this game, Chris, more than anything else, is how this will affect the college football playoff. There are games that will have implications on the future of the sport. There are then games that basically are what I would call the final showdown to guarantee a spot. I'm going to make a bold call real fast before we even get into more of a preview. The winner of this game is going to the college football playoff in 2024. I don't see a scenario where the loser of this game walks away and is not in the dozen dance.
To your point, I mean, there's huge playoff implications on this game. Cole, as we dive into the matchup, I want to start with the Ole Miss Rebels. Are they able to find their mojo offensively?
Yep.
And be, I think, what we expected them to be out the gate. Again, you played 4 nobodies to start. The moment you've stepped into conference play and picked on somebody of your own size, it's been more so you being picked on. Now, listen, you bounced back the right way after the Kentucky game. You got the win at South Carolina. But, Cole, even that one, it felt like it left things to be desired. Like the Ole Miss team, I think we expected to see, if they were clicking the way we thought they would, they win that game 45-3, 48-3. Like, did it not? It feels like they're walking in quicksand right now. The running game's not quite going the way you feel like it should. Even Jackson Dart's he's not been bad. He wasn't bad against South Carolina, but that offense doesn't have quite the explosiveness that we thought it would. Is Ulysses Bentley on a milk carton yet? Where in the world is this guy been? What did he do? Like, I mean, I know Ole Miss fans are asking the same thing. Is this the game? Like, do we see Ole Miss get better are they getting acclimated to better competition? And LSU defensively, to your point, it's interesting talking to LSU folks. The loss of Harold Perkins is not one that I think, for most teams, if you thought to yourself, man, we just lost our best player on defense, that would be a big shot. But you talk to them, Cole, and maybe this is coping, I don't know, but from what they've told me, hey, Chris, he's a positionless player. Like, as good as he is, like, he's a guy that the impact, it's hard for him to make because you don't even know where to put him. You don't even know what to do with him. So maybe the loss of Harold Perkins isn't as drastic and severe as we once thought. But sticking with the Ole Miss side, Cole, they've had some troubles in the offensive line. This should be an opportunity for the offensive line to play one of their best games. All due respect to LSU's defensive front, it's not as good as Kentucky's. It's not as good as South Carolina's. It's not going to be one of the better ones they face. Now, again, does that mean LSU couldn't come out, play one of their best games? That's not what I'm saying, but this should be an opportunity. Do we see Ole Miss get some things rolling, look more like we expected? And, oh, by the way, Cole, we were just talking about it. Are they going to have to do it with their best playmaker out of this game, Trey Harris? We don't know his status, right? Went out in the South Carolina game in the second quarter, didn't return. What's the status of him? And if he's not able to go, or Cole, if he's limited, interstage right, Juice Wells, Jordan Watkins. How about Caden Prescorn, a guy that had 10 catches in the bowl game? He hasn't been the same, right? Like,
Caden Lee, you got to throw him in too. I mean, just so many.
Lee. I mean, there's so many other guys, but Cole, is this the game? Because I think it's going to happen. I think Ole Miss in SEC play is going to have that game where everything starts clicking. I think it's going to happen. Is it this game in Baton Rouge is my question.
The question isn't even, is it this game? The answer is, can it be this game? Because it has to. You're not affording yourself an ability to lose another matchup because of the Kentucky performance. And this is sometimes where, again, having that cupcake preseason of a schedule does bode against you. It's very similar to when teams come off a buys and they kind of take it nonchalantly and they have 2 weeks to prepare. Sometimes it comes back to bite you in the keister. That's what happened. You went up against a defense that was able to show you where your weaknesses are. And like it or not, LSU's defense is not going to be laying over and dying. They've looked a lot better than I think people want to give them credit for, especially with Blake Baker, especially with how this defensive front is, because they didn't go out and they didn't add in a 5-star like a Dominic Williams or a Deuce Harmon or a Simeon Barrow, but they still are one of the better teams in the SEC in adding in pressures, adding in tackles for losses. And this offensive line for Ole Miss has been very hit or miss, even though they have gone up against two of the better defensive front sevens in college football. Now, with that being said, when you go back and you really watch that game the way that I did out in Cola, there were so many just miscues of where a quick pass here, not a touchback by Juice Wells, letting it fall into the end zone when you're at the 2-yard line. That game is 45-3. That game, there is so much meat left on the bones from whether it was an errant pass, whether it was a little bit outside the reach of a Jordan Watkins or a Caden Lee, whether it was losing a Trey Harris in that matchup. There is a scenario where that cohesive, concise version of Ole Miss is actually winning that game by not only 40 points. They're handling business, and we're watching Austin Simmons come in the fourth quarter. That's what we're seeing. You're going to have to see someone step up. This is the game where also, when I look at it, it shouldn't have to be the Trey Harris matchup. The one thing I want to see in the game against South Carolina was who can be that number 2. Because Harris right now still, even after leaving in the second quarter, leads all college football receivers by over 100 yards in receiving yards at this point. So that just shows you how physically dominant and prominent number 9 is for the offense. But you watch as Caden Lee got involved. You watch as Jordan Watkins got involved. You watch as Juice Wells was able to find a way to kind of create himself in this light of why I went down to Ole Miss. You're going to have to see it in this game, because even if Harris does play, it's going to be at a limited capacity. This is exactly what you want if you're an LSU defensive back. Take out their best player and see what Jackson Dart can do. And there also has to be a moment where Jackson Dart realizes, I'm the Heisman favorite down in the SEC, at least in this building, for a reason. There's a reason why people were talking about me as the best quarterback in this conference, because of what I have at my disposal. And Lane Kiffin did everything possible to bring in the right personnel, but it's more than that. It's also the fact that you hear the way that players talked about this season, whether it was a Henry Parrish, who, again, can we get him more involved? Whether it was a Matt Jones, whether it was a Caden Prieskorn, whether it was a JJ Pegues, whether it was a Jared Ivey, whether it was one of your secondary players, whoever it may be, you heard players say, this is the last dance. We're not satisfied going out with an 11-win season, capped off with the victory against what is basically little brother of the Big Ten, Penn State. We want more. You have those guys there. This is where you're going to have to attack it. And the one question mark is right now when it comes to LSU, can you prevent it? Because I think that the front seven has played out of its mind for what they have. Mm-hmm. The secondary leaves a lot to be desired. Mm-hmm. This is a game when you look back, even though you don't have a Harold Perkins, and again, maybe because of that positionless player thing, it allows you to now move Major Burns back down to the star. You feel better about now having Jordan Gilbert as your starting safety, rotating him for the other spot. There still is a lot left to be desired for this secondary part for LSU. There's a lot to be desired, I think, for Ole Miss's passing attack outside of Trey Harris. So who's going to be more desired after this game? Who is going to finally say, no, this is the moment where we woke up? And I think you have to think of it or at least right now, because of they don't have a conference loss. It has to be Ole Miss's offense.
Cole, this is a game too. I think Lane Kiffin's going to need to be in his bag. Like it was Kentucky's defense, but there was some uninspiring play calling in that game. And we know what Lane Kiffin can do. We saw him dial it up a year ago in this contest. I'll be curious to see what Lane's got up his sleeve. I think he relishes these kind of moments. Like, I think he really looks forward to these type of games. Cole, I don't want to oversimplify this thing, but it feels like the quarterback that plays the best is going to win this game.
That's it.
On the other side, Garrett Nussmeier. Listen, baby, it's your time to shine. I mean, flat out. You took over for Jaden Daniels, the Heisman Trophy winner. Nobody's asking you to be Jaden. Nobody's asking you to be that guy, but your stage is set, my friend. Like, this is where legends are made at a place like LSU. Night game at home, a top 10 opponent, top 15 opponent, whatever coming in. I believe Ole Miss still in the top 10. again, it comes down to quarterback play in a contest like this. And you've got weapons of your own too, right? And they've been LSU's been a beautifully chaotic team this year. I mean, from the loss to USC in game 1, the crazy game against South Carolina, they kind of slopped their way around with UCLA and South Alabama. There were even uncomfortable moments in the game against Nichols in week 2.
Yeah.
The thing I go back to, and I'm maybe a little concerned about with Garrett, is this. I saw him in that South Carolina game in person. Cole, Ole Miss has got dogs on the front 7. They've got dogs on the D-line. Pegues, Nolan, they got some studs up there, NFL guys. LSU's offensive line, they've been great in pass blocking, not so much run, but I saw South Carolina get after him. And I saw Garrett, that was the last time we saw him against, similar level, if not same level competition, right? Best defensive front he's faced, you could argue that in Kentucky. Or excuse me, that in Southern Cal. South Carolina's the best defensive front he's faced. I'm getting my schedules mixed up. When Garrett Nussmeier's under pressure, we've seen him make some ill-advised throws. This is the kind of game you can't afford to have that happen, right? I mean, the last time I saw him out in SEC play, he had 2 pick sixes wiped off the board, right? Yep. Now, he was very good in the second half of that game. He looked more like I expected. But do we see Garrett Nussmeier in this game under control, controlling the emotions, again, controlling the offense, controlling the game? Because I've seen him when he's under pressure get flustered, and I think this Ole Miss defensive front could get in some issues. Now, LSU offensively, find some balance. Caden Durham, Caleb Jackson, Josh Williams, find some balance in the running game, right? Like, don't put it all on Garrett, right, with the offensive attack. You've got the weapons on the outside. I think you can win some battles on the outside against the Ole Miss secondary, who I think is obviously really talented, really good, but I think that's where they're probably going to be most susceptible. I think it's going to be probably pretty hard, with especially the way you've been running the football this year. Cole, I don't know, this is the week you find the running game. You're going to have to mix it in. You're going to have to pop some and have some balance, but this game really does feel like, Cole, it comes down to just quarterback play. Whichever quarterback has the better night, that's going to be the team that wins the game. I know that's oversimplifying things, but Garrett Nussmeier, it's your time to shine. My biggest question for him, Cole, is Ole Miss is going to bring the heat. They've got the dogs up front. Can he stand in there, take the lick, still deliver the football, and at minimum, limit the mistakes? Because, again, last time out I saw him against an SEC defensive front, and a damn good one comparable to an Ole Miss, he played well in the second half, but he got away with some mistakes I don't think he can get away with in this game.
He can't. He absolutely can't. The big question that I have especially is, are we going to continue to see this Ole Miss defensive front be what it is? We're looking at back-to-back weeks with double-digit tackles for loss, 5+ sacks. And that's against a Kentucky offense that, yes, has very little life at times, but Ole Miss's defense did everything possible outside of giving up the explosive plays in that matchup in Oxford to keep Jackson Dart able to sling it around the yard. He did. He 100% did. This is the number 2 scoring defense in the country. This is the number 1 run defense in the country. They have dudes. This is one of the best teams on third down when it comes to pressure rates. They lead college football in sacks. This is Ole Miss that we're talking about. That's unheralded. That's almost unfathomable.
Cole, can I interject really quickly too, though? Big storyline in this game. This is by far the best offense they faced.
100%.
Kentucky and South Carolina. I mean, by far the best offense they faced.
But at the same time, you also realize that it's the best passing attack they'll face and the best pass pro they'll face.
Yeah. What
about run blocking? Because that has been a major caveat. Now, Caden Durham last week or 2 weeks ago against USA had a phenomenal performance. That's your lead back, and now you work in Josh Williams however you see fit. That's a fair statement.
That kid's been phenomenal. He's got to be the feature guy.
He is your feature guy, and then you mix in number 18 because if he has earned the right to be on that football field. That's what you got to do. But this is not one of those games where you're going to say, oh, we're rushing for 270. That's not happening. You'll be lucky if you're in the red zone and you get 2 rushing touchdowns. You'll be extremely lucky at that standpoint. Is Chris Hilton going to play in this game? We've been hearing for weeks now, Chris Hilton is at 85%. Chris Hilton is at 90%. We don't want to rush him back if he's at 100%. You need that vertical threat because if I love Xavier Thomas right now, I still think is a few plays away from getting to that level. You know what you got in Aaron Anderson, who's really stepped up. You know what you have in Kyron Lacey. that basically is becoming the next wide receiver first round pick. You know what you got in CJ Daniels. You know what you got in Mason Taylor. The playmakers are there, especially for Garrett to work. But the weak point for for Ole Miss is that vertical threat. Go back and look at Brock Vandagriff. 4th and 6 or 4th and 8 from their own 19-yard line. They get that stop, game's over. Game's over. And you're now and we're talking about Ole Miss is potentially en route to being one of, if not the best team in the SEC, and certainly the number one team in college football. But you allow that explosive play. Do you have a wide receiver that can do that? Who is it? Who can it be? Is it going to be Aaron Anderson? Is it going to be CJ Daniels? Could it be Xavier Thomas? Do you get Chris Hilton back? This is the moment that Garrett Nussmeier has been waiting for. This is the moment why Garrett Nussmeier said, I'm going to stick around and be at this program, this complex, this facility, because if I know that I can be someone special. You don't get many moments like this in college football where you get to actually have that storybook tale come to life. It's in your backyard. You have the purple and gold relishing over you. You know what that stadium atmosphere is going to be like. And you have an opportunity to set the tone for the rest of the season and even lose a game to, say, Alabama and still make the college football playoff. You do. This is going to be coming down to quarterbacks. Who wants it more? Maybe not who needs it more, who wants it more, and who can get that last punch. Another bold statement. The team with the ball at the very end of the game is the one that wins it. Can you be the one with the ball at the very end of the game?
Definitely feels like a last possession kind of game. And to your point, Cole, like as you were talking, I think both these teams are going to try to attack each other very similar ways. Like neither's like a juggernaut when it comes to running the football. Both have premier weapons on the outside. Both have gunslingers at quarterback. But both have offensive, dare I say, masterminds. You can argue on the LSU side. Some LSU folks would. But both are very capable on the offensive side of the football, pushing the ball vertically. It's which quarterback's hitting more of those shots, which group of receivers is winning more of those one-on-one battles, which of these tight ends is serving more as that safety valve and picking up those valuable yards, and then who can find balance and keep the other defense honest, right? You're going to have some level of balance, but it's going to be a good old-fashioned shootout, man. I really believe that. These two quarterbacks, these two gunslingers going at it. And, again, if you're Garrett Nussmeier for LSU, when you get those shots, because you're going to get them, can you hit them? Can you take advantage? Yep. You're going to get 3, 4, 5 looks in this game. Can you convert? That's the big thing. Who can cash in on more of those opportunities? Which of these two quarterbacks can have the more productive night? That's really what it feels like, Cole. It's going to come down to. That being said, let's dive into our predictions, Cole. I'll let you start. LSU Ole Miss Magnolia Bowl, Saturday night in Death Valley. Who comes out on top?
I keep looking back at this game from last year and knowing what Brian Kelly probably felt as he took that podium out in Oxford. We were a defense away from being in the college football playoff. And we've been that for 2 years now. With what we've had at wide receiver, with what we've had at quarterback, with what we have on the offensive line, we went out and we added in the right personnel when it comes to coaches. We may not have had the best defensive overall players, but we're playing up to a certain standard. On top of that, this game is in Death Valley. Dreams die in front of Tiger Nation. You have this as a night game. You have those from the boondocks, those from the swamps, the Cajun culture coming alive and well starting at 5 a.m. and is going to reach its peak an hour before kickoff as they funnel on into that stadium, one of the greatest stadiums in all of college football. And you have an Ole Miss team that is far from fully healthy. That's something I think that we have to go ahead and give a lot of credit to when it comes to why Ole Miss maybe at times struggled when it came to South Carolina. You lose your best receiver. You're without Princely and Manley Ellen. You're down a couple players. You watch as several players, fake injuries, real injuries, whatever it is in that game, that becomes a deal. They're not at full health, and yet they still found a way to really show, no, we're the team that ends up being on best. They have two quarterbacks that could easily be in New York City for the Heisman Trophy presentation. And this is a game where you will look back and go, that's why I'm here. This is the reason why I'm here. They have offenses with playmakers. They have defenses that I think are over exceeding expectations for our imagination with what they brought in. This game comes down to one major caveat. The bye week. bye week. Because Georgia struggled in the first half after their bye week. Alabama struggled in the second half after their bye week. Mizzou went on the road and struggled after their bye week. Tennessee went and struggled after their bye week. And Ole Miss has not had a bye week. And Ole Miss has been salivating at the chops, realizing this is the game where we wake up and we choose violence. This is the game where we make sure everyone in the nation knows why we are the best in college football, and the storylines and the narratives and all of the crap that has been spewed upon us with Lane Kiffin just being a troll job and not an elite coach. We've been circling it. This is the moment that Dartnado wakes up. This is the moment where the Heisman campaign starts being complete, down for number 2. This is the moment where Ole Miss shows you this is why we are a college football playoff contender. LSU, best of luck to you, but you're dropping this one. Give me Ole Miss to keep the dream alive in Death Valley, 38-30.
And so you think it's an Ole Miss last possession? They scored.
I think it's an Ole Miss. My bad, 37-30. Yeah, okay. Ole Miss last possession. 30-30 going to last one, 37-30.
Last team with the ball finds a way to win the game. Cole, to your point, Ole Miss is banged up. I think you look at the injury reports that Lane Kiffin's been putting out, and is he trolling? I think kind of low key. He puts like 40 guys on their injury report. It's like, come on, man, really? But I do think they're banged up. I think that's a factor in this game. You mentioned the bye week. I kind of go the other way with it. LSU got a bye week. Cole, Ole Miss is playing what? This is their seventh consecutive game. 7th consecutive. Without taking a breath, without coming up for air. Our friends over at ESPN 104.5 Baton Rouge sent me this stat, Cole, that I want to read off to you. LSU, coming off a bye week, the stat or the graphic says since 2019. I think this has to be since 2009. I could be wrong because they're 10-3 off a bye week. 8-1 off a bye against teams that are not named Alabama. And they've scored 30 or more points in 9 of those 10 wins coming off of a bye week. So LSU has been very good. Brian Kelly is 15-8 against the spread all time as a head coach coming off of the bye week. I do think the bye week benefits LSU here. I do think the bye week benefits the Bayou Bengals in regards to, obviously getting healthy, mending up, getting 2 weeks to prepare, and Ole Miss not having one going into their 7th consecutive game. Cole, we talked about it earlier. I don't want to oversimplify, but the game comes down to quarterback play. That's what it's going to come down to. This is Jackson Dart against Garrett Nussmeier as much as anything. Now, do I think this is going to be another 55-49 game? I don't. I think both these defenses have improved. I think that goes without saying. I mean, LSU, even from a personnel standpoint, losing Harold Perkins, they're so much better from a scheme standpoint and what Blake Baker is doing, a culture standpoint, a mentality standpoint. They're not going to give up 55 points. At least I don't think so. So these two quarterbacks doing battle, Cole. I mean, again, it's going to be a good old-fashioned 2 gunslingers going at it. And you very well may be right. I don't disagree. Last team with the ball could win this football game. Cole, I go back to this. You mentioned it. And again, dare I oversimplify, you don't walk into Death Valley at night and win a game like this over the LSU Tigers. You just don't. There are certainties, Cole, in college football. There are things that are as much tradition as waking up and, pouring yourself a cup of coffee and going out to the tailgate and hanging out with friends and colleagues and going to the stadium and watching college football every single Saturday. And there are things you don't do, Cole, in college football. You don't complain about a weak slate. You don't go to the apple orchard or pumpkin patch, or you don't have fall weddings, and you don't go into Death Valley and beat LSU at night. There are things you don't do, Cole Thompson. This is going to be an incredible game. down to the wire. It could be last team with the football. I don't know who's going to have it last. But I do think Garrett Nussmeier and the LSU Tigers, I think Garrett Nussmeier on the home stage out-duels Jackson Dart. And I said this, Cole, at the beginning of the season. The biggest difference in this LSU defense from last year to this year, they're not going to be great. But you know what they're going to do, Cole? They're going to get that one stop they couldn't get last year. That's all they needed in Oxford was one stop, and they couldn't get it. Blake Baker and company gets that one stop at the end of the game. LSU seals a massive home win. Give me the Bayou Bengals 34, Ole Miss 30. Again, Cole, like you said, there's no such thing as a weak slate in college football. You don't do fall weddings. You don't beat LSU in Death Valley at night in front of what's going to be one of the most unhinged crowds and atmospheres we see in college football this season. You just don't do it.
You don't. Unless you're a legit national champion.
Unless you're Dartnado.
Unless you're a legit national champion contender. Unless you have number 2, who is about ready to uncork a Category 5 chaos concern out in Baton Rouge. Dartnado versus Nussbus. One of us is walking away pretty smart on Sunday Fun Day.
Dartnado against Nussbus. Guys, I'm going LSU. Cole's going Ole Miss. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Who you rocking with and who you picking when LSU and Ole Miss do battle on Saturday night in the Magnolia Bowl? Guys, that's going to do all for us. Appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in. And make sure you like, subscribe, turn notifications. Check us out via podcast, wherever you get those. You can also find us across all social media platforms, as well as our website, SECUnfiltered.com. For Cole Thompson, I'm Chris Phillips. Appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in. And we will catch you on the other side.